All right, let's go ahead and get started. Raul, do you want to give the technical update?
Yeah, let me just, I put the link to the update in the chat, and I'm going to share my screen. So welcome to Community Update 184. So the mainnet and testnet status remains the same. Basically, we're focused on block merge work primarily, and then there is some work going on the hard fork 3. And then there are some bug fixes and performance improvement activities going on. And of course, the block merge work involves a lot of testing. And we have basically two main pieces to the block merge that we're trying to finish. One is attestation messages, which allow for finalization to proceed in the absence of regular paid transactions. And the other piece is what we described earlier as per deploy vault. Basically, what we realized is that if we only had the validator level rev vault, which was the case earlier, that there are a lot of conflicts that we were thinking about per deploy level vault, but in actually implementing this, it was clear, or it became clear that it's really better to just treat this as merging the rev balances directly. So that's the second piece of the work. On the attestation messages, there is a new draft PR that NotZipper has put in, and it just came in. There are still failing tests that he's going to be resolving and making additional changes before this is ready for review. And this is not surprising. I mean, meaning basically attestation messages is a new construct. So we have to look at what impact it has on finalization and all different stages of the processing and furthering of the network. So that's basically what is going on right now. That's what is being looked at. Then on the per deploy vault, or this rev balance merging, work is processing. It's a little bit slow going, but certainly the work is processing. We should see some improvement over the next, something in the form of PRs over the next several days. There is a new draft PR also for performance benchmarks. I said last week that we're going to be running some performance benchmarks, both to inform ourselves where we need to focus for performance improvements, as well as to help out Ross Talbot with his activity or initiative to quantify the power consumption benefits in connection with the transaction speeds on the network. So there is some benchmarks work there. But there is still quite a bit more that needs to be done there. We're looking at using InfluxDB as in a more robust manner in the network, so that it captures all the events, and then we should be able to make queries from it relatively quickly, as opposed to currently our methods are either looking at the logs or looking at Zipkin or things like our Jaeger or things like that. So rather than be tied down by the interfaces and capabilities of other parties, if we have all the data in the InfluxDB, we should be able to quickly get whatever information we want just by running some queries. So that's the other activity there that we'll be spending some time on over the next couple of weeks. In the whole testing and benchmarking, recently, NotZipper identified that refunding at the end of each block is slow. So we're looking at alternatives to fix that. One option is to delay refunding until the epoch change or something like that. So that's a piece of activity or new activity that we'll be doing. And in addition, in the benchmarks or in the performance improvement arena, we said earlier that whatever we learned from GSI in terms of the kind of optimizations we have to do to the data structures to leverage their hardware acceleration. We realized that we could do that, at least much of that directly in software. And that's the activity that Dennis has been exploring. And he has done some analysis of that work in terms of what needs to be done in the performance improvements, especially in the history or Merkle tree area. And of course, he's new to the code base, so he's going to be spending a little bit of time becoming familiar with what is there and the version that Tomislav has created. So he and Tomislav are going to work together to improve performance there in that. Now, separately, this is just optimization for performance. There will be some activity in future for optimizing for storage, but right now we're not tackling that. We'll get to that after we're done with the work to optimize performance. Then there are a few bug fix PRs. There is NetZipper has included a PR for rejection options and added tests for that. That's one PR. And then Will had a bug fix PR for the fact that we were not encoding the full data in the hash. So now the full data set is being used for hashing. And there's also a cleanup PR that he has added. The transaction API is much improved now. And it's also further improved to use the database cache upon node restart, as opposed to trying to create transactions from the scratch whenever a node is restarted. So that's also, that's merged now. And then there is a corresponding bug fix that was introduced in there. I mentioned that Toby created a nice Rolang SDK for newbies to the platform so that they can just go through the set of steps on this link that I put here and then install everything you need for development on the RChain platform. He further improved that documentation and the set of steps. He had done a couple of trial runs of that with both Rio and me. And so he installed that, we installed the full RChain platform for development on my machine, going through his steps. And I think it's a good idea to include a link to this and in the main RChain.coop so that people that are new to the development, if they want to know, okay, how do I get started? This is as good a set of steps as possible. And that works. I have not personally tested on Linux and other environments, but it should work fine. We installed on a Windows machine the other day. So those are the changes there. The POS or the hard fork 3, which is a POS hard fork, that work is continuing. Quantifier expects to get all the tests passing. There's, I think, only one test that is still not passing, but he's working on that to get the soft fork process completed. And then the other PR in that area of hard fork 3 is the RevVault logging PR, and that's being reviewed currently. So that's the net set of changes and work that was being done over the last week. Let me see if I'm forgetting anything else. I think that's about all. Are there any questions, comments on any of this? All right, over to you, Greg.
Thank you so much, Rao. I do have a few comments I want to make about some a recent marketing campaign and kind of informational or educational campaign, but I'd like to do that closer to the end. Let's see, we did have a couple of board or at least one board vote yesterday. So we have approved a master services agreement with the China team. If you want more details about that vote or the discussion, please join us on Friday. Any other questions or comments you think we might want to cover about the board meeting from any of the other board members that are present here? Okay, let's move it over to Darryl. Darryl, do you want to give the week in review?
Sure.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Here's the week in review for Thursday, August 5th to today, August 11th. In the governance committee, there's discussion around token supply, and Jim discussed more about horizontal governance. Jim shared his dialogue with Daniel Schmachtenberger and Jorg Blumtritt on LinkedIn. Jorg is interested in helping evolve governance. And Rao brought up preparations needed for the AGM. On Friday in the Climate Coordination RCast, we discussed preserving important historical sites in Britain, water stress around the United States, and the degrowth movement. And Jim also presented his ideas on horizontal governance. On Monday in the Casper Stand-Up, it covered alternative interpretations of the quantifiers. In particular, in the context of quantale semantics, we sketched out 4 quantifiers, 2 additive and 2 multiplicative. We then gave a discussion on how OSLF approaches the foundations of mathematics. On Tuesday, yesterday at the Communications Working Group, we discussed having Shusi's tweets and other relevant tweets ported over to Instagram. We also further discussed how to better align with the China team and the Chinese community in general. And I gave an update on the conversation-based PR video for investors that we're working on. And then this morning in the active member hangout, we discussed the nitty-gritty of policies for allowing shards to connect to mainnet. And Jim brought up some really good points and really good kind of concepts around that. And that brings us to now.
Steve, did you want to give us any updates on the GBA?
Sure,
Meeting?
be happy to.
Which Steve?
Both of you.
Yeah, well, I'll give a little background information. I mentioned it before, I believe, but today there was a global fundraising stage, which was presented or hosted by the World Business Angel Investment Forum. And it was in conjunction with the Government Blockchain Association. I mentioned in the past that I've recently became a member of the GBA. And as a member, I have access to these additional opportunities and resources. So the way the event, it was through a sort of a virtual portal, but there was actual presentations from startups. So I presented a 3-minute presentation on DAASL via Zoom. And there's different categories. For a startup category, the fundraising amounts are 50,000 euros to 500,000 euros. And then there's a scalable category, which is for 500,000 euros to 3 million euros. So I was in the startup category, asking for funding for 500,000 euros. And there were about 18 or so companies at the event each doing 3-minute presentations. And there was a panel of 4 jurymen or jury. Apparently they're doing some type of evaluation, and I'm not sure what they had talked about a prize. So I guess, the company that did the best presentation gets some type of reward perhaps, but they had previously announced that there would be about 75 angel investors at the event, a combination of family offices, angel investors, venture capitalists, and so forth. So, and then in addition to the presentation, there is a virtual exhibit booth. So, and that's part of this virtual world that the event created. And their projects, such as DAASL, I uploaded the one pager, the white paper, and the pitch deck. So, and that'll go on from August 11th to August 15th. So people at the event in the virtual world can go up to the to my exhibit and see what documents and collateral I have available, and take a view at those. So at this point, I'm essentially just kind of waiting for results to see how I did. And if anyone is curious to learn more about the World Business Angel Investment Forum, their website, it's wbaforum.org. So you can go to that website and learn all about them. So thank you. If any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
baforum.org does not resolve in my browser.
Here, BA.
VA or BA?
So it's WBAFORUM. And let me just double check that
Okay,
that is
nice.
the.
Yes, thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Steve Henley. Steve Ross Talbot, did you want to add any color?
Yeah, I mean, 3 minutes is a challenge. I'd rehearsed mine several times and recorded it. And one of the things I noticed is that there's quite a few people that did it that were called. They were called up. So you do a 3-minute pitch. You go over 3 minutes, they cut you off. They basically cut you off by saying about 45 seconds before the end, you need to move on to your last statement. And your last statement must be, I want this much investment for this amount of equity, or whatever it may be. So what it is, the ask is. And I logged in early and listened to all the presentations. I was 15th out of about 20. And I listened to a whole bunch of them. There were a lot that, quite a lot of them would not be out of place when you consider what RChain publishing is doing, but you consider the underlying technology above RChain that's being created, both in the COVID example that many members have seen, as well as things like DAPI, in terms of how DAPI might be an interface to such a passport or an identity. And of course, what we're doing with the Eve Arnold Foundation, it's all the same soup, right? What was amazing was that the number of pitches that were in that area was quite high. I heard very few that talked about sustainability and energy efficiency. So we definitely did do. I certainly had that in mind. So that was quite interesting. Whether anyone of the RChain entrants will win, I don't know. The one I didn't know about was one NFT. So I had no idea that was going on. So it was quite a surprise to see Rao doing one NFT, because I just didn't know about that. Maybe that's because I just didn't pick that one up. I don't know. I've been very busy doing RChain publishing and trying just to focus on that. So we'll see where this goes. I've no idea. I just wanted to make sure that I gave as good an account as I could, given how new RChain publishing is. And I don't think I could have done much better than that in 3 minutes. And I'll post the link to the video of what I did, because I did play the video, which was 2 minutes and 56 seconds. So I'll post that in the member channel on Discord in due course.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. How did you feel about the venue in general? Was it, did it seem to be well attended by investors?
Well, an interesting thing. So you get a link. So it's kind of weird. I mean, Steve Henley and I were both trying to sort of get into the venue, as it were. Yeah. And it was, I have to say, it was the most complicated user interface to get into a venue that I've ever seen. I got in finally, and I sent a long message to Steve Henley about how I achieved that. and it was more luck than judgment. But you also get a Zoom link, and you're kind of put into a waiting room, and then they call you. But in my case, I don't know why, when I joined, and it says, join, connect, join audio, whatever it is, I could see everything. So I saw all the pictures on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, I could see all the participants, not all of the participants doing the presentations, because they would come and go, but I could see all the panelists. So all the people that are involved in judging this, I could see their names. I mean, not that was, it's not hidden from you, but they kept bouncing me out, and I thought it was my Zoom. So I kept killing the Zoom session off and going back in. So I heard all the pictures directly from Zoom, as opposed to their live feed, which is not through Zoom, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, so their communication was a little confusing, and I joined a little before 11 because they sent 2 emails. In one email, they said you're selected as a panelist and join us at 11. And then in the other email, they said, well, you are selected to present at this time slot, which is not at 11. So I joined anyway a couple minutes before 11 because I was not sure really what their process was. But then they explained that, well, if you're presenting, you cannot be in that forever panel where you could watch others. So you had to then wait in the waiting room to get back in.
But you could actually watch them all.
Yes, you could, which is the process that you sent, saying that, hey, if you go and register at the main forum, anybody could go and watch. And that's what I did after I saw your message for a few of them. So I want to just maybe briefly mention about 1FT. Steve Henley and I had been very, basically working very hard at getting both the DAASL presentation and the RChain presentation into the, not RChain presentation as much as the application form, but then the full DAASL application form and getting that registered and all of that. So after we did all of that, at the last minute, I had talked about the social impact business where you could use NFTs and NFT platforms to create social impact across the world, both in terms of the artists that are presenting or artists that are selling their artwork on the platforms, being able to leverage that to create more customer engagement and social impact for whatever causes they believe in. So the idea is that they could make it a social process. Either they initiate a particular social impact project or some organization they want to support, and then ask the members to chip in, or the other way around. They could ask the members to say, hey, you folks suggest to me where I should be donating my 2% or 3% or 10%, whatever it is that I'm willing to donate. So it's in that sense a process for the artists to engage with their fans and the community in general, but also help organizations worldwide that either they or their fans believe in. That's one side of that. But the other side of that is really to say, well, if NFTs are high value artifacts that are able to generate wealth for artists, why not use that venue as an opportunity to increase the exposure to low-income artists from low-income families? So expand the pool of artists and then be able to create, there are a bunch of organizations that are focused on creating job opportunities in low-income families or educational opportunities in low-income families. So partnering with them, create an opportunity for more artists to emerge from the low-income families and then be able to sell their art as NFT. That's the other side of that. So both on the demand side and the supply side of art, there is
I was worried it muddied the waters with RChain publishing, in truth.
How does it do that?
Because the whole issue of social giving, right? okay, this is not necessarily a low-income artist, but the whole issue of social giving in that way has been something that Frank Arnold has talked about from day one, and is enshrined in what we're trying to do with RChain publishing. So I'm not sure how that is particularly different from the capabilities that we expect to see in RChain publishing. Now, it's perfectly okay to have competition, but one should recognize it when it's there.
Well,
And I think there is overlap.
Yeah, to be honest, there's going to be all kinds of overlap. So for
There
example,
is, but I would much prefer in a co-op, right, that overlap is considered and discussed, because I turned up to this and I had no idea that this was coming.
yeah, I mean, I didn't either, to be honest.
Right, so
I found
that
out
wasn't. I mean, you know, that's just me, but I didn't find that the most pleasant experience. I would have preferred to have known about it beforehand.
Yeah, I understood.
Well,
I think we have to get better at that sort of thing. But you know, it's 11:28, and I just want to make sure that we give coverage to all the issues in front of us. Anything else that we want to cover while we're here at the community debrief?
Well, if you want, I could share some of the PR video that we've been working on.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping you'd say.
Cool. Okay. So let's see here. So so far I've just put some visuals for the first 5 or so minutes of a 53-minute conversation-based video where we talk about a holistic picture of the ecosystem of RChain to give investors a high-level overview of the RChain project and the various ways people can invest. So we've been working on this for a while. Hopefully we'll have it done soon. So I've just done the first 5 minutes so far, and the first 5 minutes is mainly Greg's introduction into the motivation, the why, so to speak. So that's what you'll be seeing here. But later in the video, we get more into the what, the talking about DAASL, RChat, RChain publishing, and the how, as far as how it all fits into the greater RChain strategy and vision. And also, please bear in mind that this is still very much a rough cut, and more content will likely wind up on the chopping floor as we try to edit this video down to a reasonable length. So here we go. I'll just share my screen for a sec here.
So without further ado, then I'll just launch into the discussion of RChain. So RChain aims to produce the world's most scalable blockchain. And the reason we're doing this is because we see that there are many consequences of climate change that are now unavoidable. Just as an example, it is unavoidable that we will blow past the 1.5 degree Celsius temperature rise. If you look at all the countries that have signed on to the Paris Accords, not a single one of them have really made their goals. At least not enough of them have made their goals, that we are not going to blow past the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise. But as soon as that happens, what that means is that the tropical zones become uninhabitable. I think a lot of the members of this call have talked about the wet bulb conditions, but the large scale picture is that 40% of the planet's population lives in the tropical zone. So we're talking roughly 2.8 billion people that are going to be migrating in the next 10 to 15 years. That's a humanitarian crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before. And as a result, there's going to be utter chaos, potentially collapse of important infrastructure. And so we see the blockchain as a pivotal coordination technology for being able to address all of the coordination challenges associated with the consequences of climate change. And we're not the only people who view climate change consequences as coordination problems. Even Bill Gates, in his 60-minute interview recently, pointed out that the global coordination for addressing climate change is going to be more intensive than the global coordination that happened with the world wars. So many thinkers are, from Bill Gates to Daniel Schmachtenberg, are all acknowledging that there's going to be this massive global coordination problem, and that a lot of the infrastructure will be severely and sorely tested and challenged. And we see blockchain as a way to begin to address that because of its decentralized nature. So it's decentralized both at the level of the compute capabilities that it brings and at the level of the governance capabilities that it brings. But in order for it to fulfill that function, it has to scale. You can't use a technology that's burning up the planet even faster, like proof of work. And you can't use a technology that's as slow as Bitcoin, which is running at roughly 5 transactions per second. So we have to address those technically, and RChain addresses those technically using best of breed mathematics and software engineering to provide an architecture that scales to meet the coordination needs. So it builds upon the best ideas that have surfaced in blockchain. So the idea of a economically secured, leaderless distributed consensus algorithm is a brilliant idea. Until proof of work was launched, the views on distributed consensus were very much stuck in lockstep consistency, which means that availability and other characteristics were sacrificed. If, however, you shift towards eventually consistent, that completely changes the game. And Bitcoin and Ethereum are good examples of what you get if you shift in that direction. There are, in fact, mathematically speaking, an infinite number of these economically secured leaderless distributed consensus algorithms. As an example, the family of proof of stake algorithms, again, there's a lot of those. They also offer these features, but not at the energy and entropy costs that are associated with proof of work. And so there's a significant scaling opportunity there. The other major technical innovation, for example, that is the shift from Bitcoin to Ethereum, is recognizing that if we just abstract away the consensus algorithm, then the next question is, well, using this consensus algorithm, we can get all of these non-trusting parties to agree on a value, a locally stored value. So what's the class of values they should store?
Okay,
That's looking much better. Wow, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that's as far as I've gotten. I put in some more work last night, Craig.
Oh no, that's really great. I think it's starting to come together. Any comments from others?
I have a comment. I think it looks great. I think Darryl did a great job. Greg, I don't know if I want to caution you. I just think we should be careful with, and I said this yesterday on the communications call, I just think we should be careful with like the claims that we make about certain, potential realities with climate. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
I'm trying to be as conservative as I possibly can. I mean, all the numbers that I've given are more conservative than the IPCC numbers.
I know. I just think, for example, like, I don't think anything in this content needs to be changed or edited. Like, I think it's fine the way it is. I just think, like, in the future, just be careful that you're not saying, like, the one thing that stuck out to me is like, oh, and when we go past 1.5, the tropical zones become uninhabitable. Like, boom. Like, we don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know how many people are going to leave the tropical zones. Like, I agree with you that you're being conservative and like you can't contest any of the facts that you said. I just think that we should be careful in like saying that we, the co-op, that we know what's going to happen and that it's a certainty exactly what's going to happen. I just think we could be a little bit more careful about presenting things in that way while still communicating the science and like explaining that we're in deep, what? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. For me, it's a judgment call. You at some point you have to sort of
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't
So-
think there's anything wrong with what you said. You asked for comments, and that would just be my only comment, is just to be careful about saying what certain things are going to happen for sure. Like, for example, you said that people are going to migrate within 10 to 15 years. Like, that is
They're
a high
already
probability.
migrating, to be fair. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
they're
that's
already
actually
making-
reality.
It
They're
is
already
reality.
migrating.
It is reality. I just feel it's important to not, just because we don't know exactly what is going to happen. All of this is very likely to happen. We just don't know exactly how soon. We don't know exactly how many people it will affect at exactly what time. I just don't want to get caught in a situation where Greg goes on the spike, just like Al Gore did. You know what I mean? Even though his film Inconvenient Truth was extremely important, changed my life, basically was accurate, but I just, you know what I mean? I just want to be careful that we're not saying, okay, in 5 years, 2 billion people are going to migrate. Well, maybe it's 10 years, or maybe, do you know what I mean? Anyway, something to think about. You can take it with a grain of salt.
No, those are great comments. I really appreciate it. Typically what I say is, you know, these events are likely. I may have been, because it was a practice call that we ended up turning into a more official communication. I may have been less guarded in my words, but yeah, it's a good point.
Good job it wasn't me doing it, I'll tell you. You know what I'm saying, Nora.
Well, this is the thing, though. Is like
People would run for the
we all
hills.
have our opinions, you know, like I have my opinions about living in LA and what's going to happen here, but I just think it's important that, you know, we don't, you know, sort of try to predict exactly what's going to happen, because then people are going to get stuck on the prediction rather than the actual problem, which is,
You're
you know,
absolutely right.
doesn't
I think
matter. It doesn't matter if it's 5 or 10 years or 50, like it doesn't matter. Do you see
Yeah,
what I'm saying? You don't want people to get
Nora,
stuck on.
you're spot on. It's
Yeah.
not getting caught up on the, if you're not careful, the prediction takes precedence over what you're actually trying to tell people.
Right.
So
Which is
I
that,
completely agree with that. That's
Yeah.
and it's a hard act. You did it much better than I would have, Greg. But yeah. I
think the video is great. It's more of a comment just for everyone sort of in the future.
Yeah, I love the graphics. That's why you do your job, Darryl, and I don't do that job.
Well, I think it's going to start getting, you know, just, you know, because I know the content, I'm excited about, you know, just showing how this video unfolds and how kind of the, you know, the holistic vision of RChain is kind of explained, because I think, you know, we all need that. The community needs that, and investors need that. And I think it was a really great idea for Greg to kind of instigate this. And I would like to point one other thing right now. I'd like to point out something that Greg has been right all along about something. And it's easy for us to criticize people when they're wrong. But for some reason, we have a harder time giving people credit and recognition when they're right. And so because Greg can't do that for himself, I'm going to try to do it for him here. So a few trollers in the social network mediums in the past have expressed a sentiment that the RChain platform development is being held back by Greg's climate change mitigation hobby. And the sentiment usually goes something like this. In order for us to benefit from Greg's mathematical and computational genius in creating RChain and Rolang, we have to tolerate his completely unrelated fixation with climate change. So from my perspective, we now have information from the industry that the two are not unrelated at all, and in fact are intrinsically interwoven. In 2021, BlackRock made bold statements about their investments into renewables and green energy, while Goldman Sachs listed Exxon as a sell. And Elon Musk sent the price of Bitcoin plunging in May with a tweet about its energy consumption. There are thousands of other examples of the economy shifting to decarbonization this year. And today, Cointelegraph posted an article that hits the key point that layer one platforms need to earn investor interest by way of establishing the greenness of their platform. The article's entitled Measuring Success, Is Offsetting Cryptocarbon's Emissions Necessary for Adoption? So though the article is mainly focused on the futile Bitcoin offsetting aspect of things, it does make a key point. I'll just put a quote here. Francisco Benedito, CEO of Climate Trade, a fintech company helping organizations achieve sustainability by offsetting, told Cointelegraph that the crypto sector is experiencing a, quote, green hype cycle, which is pushing industry's sustainability. Although Benedito believes that this is being exhibited in a number of different ways, he explained that offsetting carbon emissions has now become one of the most important initiatives. This is especially the case as crypto companies continue to face increasing pressure from investors, lenders, and regulators to decarbonize in the coming years. Venki Kumar, manager of climate data and technology at KPMG US, told Cointelegraph that crypto organizations are now expected to estimate the carbon footprint of their digital asset holdings. So there you have it. That last quote from Cointelegraph today lays it out very clearly that any investors interested in investing in a layer 1 blockchain platform will need to be assured that the platform is as green as possible. So now we can officially say that Greg's fixation on climate change mitigation isn't a hobby that distracts RChain from building its platform. It's intrinsically interwoven into it. And as it turns out, was actually a wise, forward-thinking business decision. So anyway, I just want to say that because I know Greg's not ever going to say that himself.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, sure.
Very simple. We would not be talking to the Eve Arnold Foundation were this not the case. Full stop.
Yeah, we should contact the author of that article maybe and talk with them. Although I will say carbon offsets are not functionally, I'm not sure what to say.
It's the robbing Peter to pay Paul, I think was
for
the
people who don't know about carbon
it's
offsets,
creative accounting applied to climate change.
Yeah, so basically the emissions still go up. You just paid somebody to do something that may or may not offset them.
Yeah, it just becomes somebody else's problem. The
Right.
problem
So
is
what we
we're all
need
on
to
the
do,
same planet.
Yeah, so what we need to do is something much more advanced than that, but I'm glad people are writing about that. And yeah, I think it would be a good idea to contact the author and see if we could have a conversation with them, or maybe bring them on the Friday call or something like that.
The good idea. Good idea. So
Yeah.
I did have one other topic I wanted to cover, which I mentioned at the top of the call here, which is that I really want I wanted to draw attention to a kind of marketing push that happened over the weekend. I was engaging in conversation with some members in the Chinese community, and they were kind of frustrated with me because I wasn't willing to give them a TPS number. And I just kept saying, oh, look, the TPS number comes as a result of how many nodes you deploy. You deploy more nodes, you get more transactions per second. That's the whole point of horizontal scaling. And they said, well, if you don't give us a single number, we can't compare to other projects. And so I said, well, but the problem is the other projects are architected wrong. If you have a single number, that means you don't scale. Right? If you can give a single number that is true for all the nodes you add, that means you don't scale as you add hardware. That's the first sign that you don't scale as you add hardware. So any chain out there that's giving you a transactions per second metric that is not contingent upon the number of nodes deployed is saying upfront, we don't scale. So I really think that we need to be telling this story as plainly and clearly as possible. And that if you want to reduce it to a single number, the number you want to reduce it to is the cost per transaction. And then you can measure that cost either in dollars and cents or euros or RMB, or you can measure that in terms of the energetic cost. So you can say, how many kilowatt hours a given transaction costs. Either one of those or both of those are good numbers that you can use to measure the scalability of the chain. But that's the way to sort of boil things down. It's cost per transaction, not number of transactions per second. And that number, cost per transaction, should be the number that says how well you scale. Any questions about that? Any comments?
I just put in the chat, why not give people a minimum and then say like minimum to infinity? There you go.
Yeah, but the point is, what you really want people to do, if they're doing ERP, if they're doing enterprise resource planning, they're not interested in the minimum. They have a particular transaction rate they're trying to hit, and they want to know how much it costs them and how many servers they have to deploy.
So maybe we have to give them like a table of different scenarios that explain that.
That's right. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is you provide a table or some kind of metric, some function that says, if you want to hit this TPS, you need this many nodes with these characteristics. If you want to hit this TPS, you need this many nodes with these characteristics. That's the idea. And anyone that isn't providing that, if they're giving you a single number, it means they're not scaling as you add hardware. And that's the important thing, is we need to change the narrative here, right? Saying a single number is like advertising we don't scale.
Wow. Well, I guess that really just continues in the list of things that show that the co-op is sort of in a league of its own, that you can't even use the same terms to quantify its capabilities.
Yeah, well, no, but I think in general, I know in 2000, 2001, 2002, all of us inside Microsoft, we were talking about, for example, the cost per transactions as related to rolling out internet services. That was the standard nomenclature 20 years ago.
So why do you think people went back to transactions per second?
Because they don't scale.
So basically, because everything got really slowed down, people started to focus on the speed, because it sounds like you're saying, in a certain sense, Bitcoin sort of took us backwards in a way.
That's exactly right. The blockchain architectures, while they were a major advance in terms of availability and eventual consistency, those are great advances. This idea of using economically secured, leaderless distributed consensus algorithm oriented towards eventual consistency, that is a brilliant idea. It gives you all kinds of redundancy and availability. It's a genius idea. However, there are real engineering trade-offs when you do that, and you need to know when you want to make those trade-offs. And there are lots of cultural, technical analogies. A very, very good example from the domain of physics is the Feynman diagram calculations. So Richard Feynman was noted for using these diagrammatic calculations for measuring scattering amplitudes and things like this, and they were very effective in his hands. Nobody understood them until Freeman Dyson came along and said, well, here's how you formalize them. Most physicists of the generation that Feynman was succeeding was saying, this is syntax, it has nothing to do with physics. The reality was that the generation after Feynman, all they could do was calculate Feynman diagrams. They were so much better at doing the calculations. Like before Feynman diagrams, you could barely do toy systems. With Feynman diagrams, you could do much better than toy systems. You could do realistic calculations. That was the but if you look at the cultural dialogue about Feynman diagrams, this isn't even physics, to, oh my God, this is so much better, to and the subsequent generations have tried to turn everything into Feynman diagrams, even when they don't work. Right. So there's the whole dialectic that you can see, you know, in a single conceptual tool. So the same thing is happening here, right? So there was this great tool, which was this economically secured leaderless distributed consensus algorithm. Brilliant idea, but then it's taken a long time for people to reintegrate that idea back into wisdom that we've had forever, right? So it's like the blockchain people lost URLs, right?
Yeah.
They used a flat namespace, right? So addresses inside Ethereum or Bitcoin are flat. They don't have structure, right? That is a step backwards. The TPS thing is another example of a step backwards. If you look at IPFS, this is a step backwards. We've known for a very, very long time that if you're going to have storage, along with storage, you need a notion of transaction and you need a notion of query. Those have to, and we've also known through hard-won wisdom that has to be built in from the beginning. You don't get to, you don't get to tack that on as an afterthought. So all of these things we knew, but it was like we forgot all of them as soon as we saw this shiny leaderless distributed consensus toy. Right?
I have one more related question.
Okay.
I just feel like a lot of people on climate Twitter really don't get any of this, and they are really mad about Bitcoin, and they think everything is like Bitcoin. And, I try to respond to these people sometimes. And I think it's really sad that there's a huge rift between the crypto community and the climate community right now. I feel like they need to come together, obviously. But there's just one question that people always ask is why did the creator of Bitcoin, whoever this mysterious person is, people, whatever, why did they create this algorithm that was so energy, wasteful, if they thought people were gonna, either they thought nobody was gonna use it, so it didn't matter, or they really wanted people to use it, but just didn't think about the fact that it would be so wasteful. Do you have any idea about that? I know it kind of doesn't matter because it's looking back and what's done is done. People ask that all the time.
Oh yeah. It's absolutely there's so much information to try to synthesize. It is very, very difficult to hill climb all at once, right? So they got an algorithm. Nobody expected that the algorithm 1.0 is going to be the right algorithm. That never, ever, ever happens. Right? It's always a process of refinement. You make some good guesses, you verify your guesses, but then they fall short on a number of issues, and then you go around the circle again, right?
So we basically invented the wheel, and our car is like a Flintstone car, and everybody's so happy. That's what you're saying? That's
exactly right. God. Yeah, but the problem is that while this Flintstone car was invented, they forgot that we already had all these, developments, right? There were already other vehicles that were much more efficient at other kinds of things, and so there's been this enormous opportunity to remember what we already knew about scaling systems. And but I do want to point out that there's a communication gap. So the Chinese community has been aware of the energy issue for a very long time, and so trying to market the energy discussions that you find on climate Twitter to the Chinese community, it's yeah, but that's why all our projects are proof of stake. What are you talking about? That's news from 2 years ago. and so the climate Twitter and a lot of the US blockchain kinds of tweets, they're literally 2 or 3 years behind the scene, behind what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, most of them are. I mean, I'm sure there's a few people who know what's going on, but it's just sad because, you know, it just doesn't make any sense to me, because it's like so obvious that all these refugees are going to need help, and people like, I don't understand. I don't know. It's just frustrating, because I feel like they see crypto as sort of some kind of like enemy. And even people are tweeting about it yesterday with Andrew Yang talking about crypto being able to possibly help with a universal basic income if we ever do that. And everybody jumped on him and was like, absolutely not. And it's just frustrating. So anyway, thank you.
No, that's how human debate works, right? Information flows unevenly throughout society. You know, and if you stop for a minute and you think about it in relativistic terms, right? Light moves differently through regions of space that are different, more densely populated with matter and energy than it does through regions where there's less matter and energy, and so space-time is relatively flat. Right, so it's you know, the analogy is almost perfect, although it's flipped around. You know, more people clustered together means you have oftentimes less knowledge. No. If you have more people clustered together, it's more likely that you'll get information disseminated through the group at a rapid speed. If you have people farther out at the fringes, right, the information propagates less. But it's a similar kind of thing. Is if you think about information as essentially like light, right, then it's flowing through the noosphere.
Yeah.
In a non-even way, and it's a fact of life, and you have to learn how to deal with it.
Well, hopefully now that we have this recorded, lots of people can share it and listen to it and form their own opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great.
All right, any other questions, comments, or thoughts from folks? I really appreciate everyone's good work, and we will please stay safe, stay cool, and we'll see you on the other side.